Let's talk about all of the continuity errors in Peace Talks. Continuity errors and spelling mistakes and everything, because there are a lot of them. And the first time I read the book, I was pretty annoyed when I read these continuity errors because I had just read through the series. Everything was very fresh in my mind. I was like, wait, that's not how that was. That's not how that was. That's not how that was. But then online, I came across the wonderful Dresden Files Reddit, where Priscilla, the master of the betas and keeper of the timelines, said that for several of these little mistakes, the betas actually caught it, told the author, Jim Butcher, and then he left it in. Now there's two reasons that he would have left these in. One, it's just he had a rush deadline, he neglected to fix it, he wanted to, but he didn't. But two, these are all purposeful clues to a future mystery. So, let's explore all of these mistakes as if they're all clues, because, hey, why not? It's super fun. Interesting point number one, this isn't completely a mistake, but it's interesting, is at the beginning of the book, Ramirez goes and tells Harry, hey, Ebenezer told me to tell you that the peace talks are happening. Also, I want you to be on the security team. But then when Harry says, hey, I'm on the security team, Ebenezer is surprised. So there are lots of ways that this can be explained. And the easiest one is Ramirez just didn't tell Ebenezer that he was going to ask Harry to be on the security team. But we're not here for easy, we're here for fun. So here are some alternate explanations for why this is happening. One, the Ebenezer in Harry's apartment is a time traveler, and probably a different version of Ebenezer than the one that Ramirez talked to. Two, this version of Ebenezer is evil. Now, this has various subsections, like he's evil because he just chose to be evil, he's evil because he's gone crazy due to black magic, he's evil because he's been infected, but whatever the case, he is now working for the evil team, and is actively lying here. Option 3, Eb is only acting surprised. He actually knew all along, but he wants to make Harry think that he didn't know. And 4, Ramirez is evil. This also falls in the subcategories of evil because he wants to be evil and evil because he's infected. The funnest part about all of these different theories is that they all kind of explain it on their own, but they can also be combined. So, for example, Ramirez just being evil. Ramirez is conning Harry. Ebenezer never actually asked Ramirez to tell Harry things, and Ramirez is just name-dropping to get Harry to trust him more. But if we assume that Ramirez is lying and that he and McCoy never talked, well then we can also assume that Ebenezer is actually actively spying on Harry and Ramirez because he already knew that Ramirez had told Harry about the peace talks. Alternatively, if both Ramirez and Ebenezer are evil, and Ebenezer knows about Ramirez's plans, we can assume that they're working together on some evil conspiracy. However, if we assume that Ebenezer is genuinely surprised here and he doesn't know, however, they're both still evil, well then they're working for different evil teams. One of them is working for the Black Council, and the other one is working for Nemesis. And which one is which? Who knows? They're both fun. Ebenezer is evil and also traveling back in time. And maybe from the timeline he's in, Harry saved the day from the Fomor, and he wants to get Harry out of Chicago so that Harry doesn't interfere in the Fomor's plans, which is why he starts talking about, Harry, you have to go to defend your wizard status. Maybe he's engineered this whole thing, and then he's genuinely surprised and upset when Harry can't leave because Ramirez has this other plan. Alternatively, if Ebenezer knew the entire time that Harry wouldn't leave because he knew Ramirez's plan, it was only acting surprised, that means that he wants Harry off the White Council, and he's only playing Harry, trying to seem like he's his ally. But if Eb isn't evil, his motivation is probably more about trying to warn Harry off the Wamps. Like, he really believes that Harry is going to die because of this. Maybe because he's a time traveler and actually knows that Harry's going to die. Laura will betray him. Ebenezer is from the future. He knows everything, and he also knows that Ramirez is evil. So if Ebenezer isn't evil, his hint about someone will betray you is trying to hint at Ramirez, but he can't say it outright because paradoxes, etc. Okay. Mistake number 2, which is more of a legitimate mistake. This one is so fun. So at one point in the book, Sonia is written Santa. And Probably just a spelling error, but it's so fun to think this is definitely foreshadowing. So if Sanya becomes Santa, well, that's actually possible. He can take on the mantle of Kris Kringle. Sanya has already shown to be a symbol of hope, lover of laughter, like him, Santa, fits right together. Also, when Harry became the Winter Knight, Sanya was pretty chill about it, so he'd probably also be okay with joining Winter himself. Okay, probably the most glaring error is when Harry goes into the Brighter Future Society and he's like, this is so cool, I haven't been here since I was a ghost. Which is exactly what he said at the end of Skin Game, where he went there not as a ghost. So apparently Harry believes that he has 2 first times since he was a ghost entering the Brighter Future Society. Easy explanation, Mab has taken his memory of the first time he went to the Brighter Future Society. Not all of it, because he still remembers giving the Were-Guild to Marcone, but enough of it that he doesn't remember entering the building. Maybe because he saw her and Marcone plotting in there, right? Mab wants to hide that. So Mab and Marcone are definitely up to some shady business. Okay, next, number 3, the handshake ink tracing. This is the one that I didn't catch the first time, but like on a reread, it makes no sense. So at one point, Ramirez tracks Harry down, and the explanation is Ramirez had some ink on his pinky, and he shook hands with Harry, and Harry got it on his wrist, right? And that tracks. However, there are some issues here. The biggest issue is that Ramirez and Harry never shook hands. They fist bumped. How do you get ink on someone's wrist with a fist bump? I guess it's possible. But even if Ramirez managed to do like a beautiful job at getting the ink from his pinky onto Dresden's wrist, Dresden washes his hands, I assume, but we actually have at least 2 canonical times between the fist bump and the tracking where Harry, completely washes. 1, he takes a very long shower. 2, Butters thoroughly cleans his hands. So you'd think that all that water would wash away both the ink and the magic. Because even if it's super permanent ink and it doesn't get washed off, the magical trace is going to get washed off and then you won't be able to use it to track him, right? The best explanation for this is just like Harry's ink on Ramirez at the end of the book, it is all a misdirection. Ramirez didn't actually track Harry down using this ink. And you know how I think this? How in the world did Ramirez find Harry at the beginning of the book? Right? Harry is on the beach at 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, running with his brother. They took his brother's car, so Ramirez isn't tracking the Monster Mobile. How did Ramirez find them? Did he ask around at the embassy at 4 a.m. Hey, where's Harry Dresden? And they're like, oh, he's probably out at that beach again. I guess that's possible, but why would you go at 4 a.m.? Obviously Dresden's probably sleeping. Can't you just wait a few hours, right? Ramirez must have a different way to track Harry. Maybe he has a sample of his DNA, hair, blood, etc. Or maybe there's something else nefarious going on. Ramirez is a time traveler and he knows where Harry is because he knows where he's going to be. Okay, number 4, Conjuritis. This in itself isn't really a plot error. I guess they've never mentioned it before, but that's okay. It was kind of fun. But the problem is its name. Right? Because this is a wizard disease. It is obviously named by wizards. Wizards are huge Latin nerds, as previously part of the canon, totally Latin nerds. So we can assume that conjuritis, it literally means inflammation of the conjure, right? It would make more sense if they said something like hyperconjure or something, where you're conjuring too much. But no, it's inflammation of the conjure. So conjure is obviously some sort of wizard organ, similar to the way that the third eye, the sight, is a wizard organ, right? And it can get inflamed, and it usually happens as your powers are developing. I guess uncontrollable conjuring just happens sometimes when your conjure gets inflamed, got all infected by all those puberty feelings. Maybe all of his feelings are just infecting his conjure, and then there you go. Hopefully Harry learns to control it because that would be an awesome power-up. He does that a little bit with the bucket. We'll see. 5 is a super theory that explains almost all of the mistakes in the book. And this is time travel. So Harry will time travel in a future book. Maybe the next book. This works really, really well with the Hounds of Tindalos, the Corner Hounds that show up. Because the Hounds of Tindalos, the Corner Hounds, are from the Lovecraftian universe. And canonically, they hunt time travelers and can time travel. That's like their whole thing. Now, Jim Butcher could have picked any monster for them to fight, and the fight would have played out about the same. However, it's the Corner Hounds, which heavily suggests that either Harry or Ebenezer or both are time travelers. So, let's say Harry, next book, jumps around in time. And what we're seeing now is the shockwaves of the ramifications of his time travel. For example, at some point after Butters cleaning his hands and Ramirez tracking Harry down near the Wraith Manor, they shook hands. But then when Harry went back in time, he changed that, and then it didn't happen. So in our version of the book, we have this temporal shockwave where Ramirez and Harry never shook hands. But maybe in the original timeline, they did. And we're seeing all of these little things, these little inconsistencies, because of this temporal shockwave, which is making little changes, but not changing everything yet. This also would explain the first trip to the Brighter Future Society, that maybe the other trip never happened in the new timeline. It's mentioned that the last dragon that was killed was at Tunguska, but that contradicts the canon because Michael actually slayed the last dragon, but then Ebenezer took credit for Tunguska, so contradiction there, not a contradiction if, because of the time travel, Michael never slayed the dragon, which is kind of sad because that would like rip apart the entire Carpenter family. It mentions that he has a copper summoning circle, but at the time that his lab burned down, it was a braided summoning circle. At one point, the plaque on the Brighter Future Society says Better Future Society. And he mentions that he didn't have any sandpaper when he was making a staff, but also he mentioned in Skin Game that he did have sandpaper when he was making a staff. And many more! I'm sure there are so many errors in this book that I didn't even talk about, and I know there are links in the doobly-doo for awesome discussions on this on the Paranet forum and on Reddit, because I didn't pick up on all of these. I didn't come up with every explanation here, links to everything, because there are some really smart people out there doing awesome Dresden things. What do you guys think? What are other awesome theories we can make from these little inconsistencies?